Hello, everybody, and welcome to the third episode of the Pass Pro Podcast. I'm your host, Nigel Cornelius, and it is currently 7:13 p.m. on January 21st, 2021. In today's episode, we'll be reviewing the Divisional Round playoff games that happened last weekend, take a look into the conference championship games happening this weekend, where I'll give my picks and some betting picks I like, and then talk about some news that's happened in the NFL over the past week. To start off with the first divisional game, on Saturday in the afternoon, the evening, we had the Packers and the Rams play at Lambeau Field, where the Packers came out on top 32-18. All week we heard about how the number one defense versus the number one offense, and how the Rams had the chance to upset, and not close. The Packers, again, put 32 points up, almost 500 total yards. They broke an NFL record for the most yards on a number one defense in a playoff game, like 480-something. Aaron Rodgers had a decent day, 23 for 36, 296 yards, 2 passing TDs, and a rushing TD. The running backs all had a great day. Aaron Jones led the pack with 14 rushes for 99 yards and a TD. Devonta Adams had a decent game, made Jalen Ramsey shut the fuck up, beat him for a TD. But surprisingly, the Packers' leading receiver was Allen Lazard, with 4 receptions for 96 yards and a TD. The last one being a cover 2 dagger that Aaron audibled to because the safeties bit down on the run. As a Packers fan, that was a nice game to watch. Held the Rams to 18 points, and they only scored on 3 drives. Like every other drive, they were forced to punt, or there was a turnover. Specific guys on the defense, specifically Rashawn Gary, Kenny Clark, and Jair Alexander had a good game. In fact, Jair Alexander was the first corner in NFL history to hold for a playoff game to allow negative yards in a playoff game. He allowed 1 reception for negative 3 yards, and he was only targeted twice because he was locking down. The Rams, Aaron Donald was hurt, but the Packers O-line handled Aaron Donald really well. Rodgers didn't get sacked a single time. Cam Akers looked like he could have gotten a roll, but the offense kept the game far enough away. He couldn't rush a whole lot. Jared Goff played a lot better than I thought. Goff had a solid game, but wasn't enough to get it done. The defense really, for the Rams, couldn't hold the Packers, and at this point, if the number one defense in the league, both through scoring points allowed, same thing, passing yards and almost rushing yards, if that couldn't stop Green Bay's offense, what is? And then the Saturday night game was the Bills and Ravens, where the Bills pulled out a tight defensive battle in Buffalo, 17-3. Josh Allen didn't play a great game, only threw for 1 TD, didn't even hit 200 yards, but did enough to win, didn't make any really dumb mistakes. On the other side of the ball, Lamar Jackson got injured, which I think he's okay, which is good. But prior to that, what really, I think, turned the tide, and I'm going to say lost in the game, was Lamar threw a pick 6 in the end zone to Taron Johnson. Yeah, Lamar threw a pick 6 in the end zone to Taron Johnson, and that's what ultimately lost them the game. That was like a 100-something yard pick 6. He stared Mark Andrews down. Literally, so it was super easy to read for Taron Johnson. And that's my thing with, I don't think Lamar Jackson's going to be able to get you to where that elite level, Super Bowl level, until he can become a far better pocket passer. Right now, he's an above average passer, but a super elite athlete, one of the best runners in the league, true dual threat quarterback. And he's a pretty good thrower when he gets out of the pocket, because when he gets out of the pocket, he simplifies his reads to half the field. But what Buffalo did really well is they forced him to sit in the pocket. And what Lamar struggles with in the pocket is going through his progressions. Granted, his wide receiver core is one of the worst in the league. They really need to get some playmakers. But he tends to stare receivers down in the pocket. And as a defender, that's easy. Because when the quarterback stares a guy down, that's where he's going. He's either going to get sacked or he's going to throw into coverage or that guy's going to get open. So Taron Johnson played slightly off Mark Andrews and then made the really easy, couple yard cut over to pick that ball because Lamar wasn't looking far enough ahead. Really smart play by Taron Johnson, but ultimately could have been avoided if Lamar went through his progressions and kind of saw the field a bit better. But I do think he gets a little too much hate. He won a playoff game this year. I think the Ravens shouldn't give up on him because if he can develop his passing accuracy and his pocket presence and his ability to throw from the pocket, I think that Ravens team can be really scary. And then the earlier of the two games on Sunday, the Chiefs held off the Browns 22-17. Oh yeah, speaking of my bets, I hit both the bets I recommended. Packers covered the spread. In fact, I moved the spread to 9.5 for better odds, and they covered that. And the Browns held it within 10. Now Kansas City's going to host their third straight AFC Championship game. Andy Reid's the only coach in NFL history to host 3 straight championship games. He did it 3 times with the Eagles, and then now 3 times with the Chiefs. Mahomes is now in concussion protocol after a weird hit. They say it's not a concussion, and he possibly pinched nerves, so he's looking like he should be good to go. Even with Chad Henne and Andy Reid, by the largest pair of nuts in the NFL for the way he calls plays. Holy shit. Fourth down, you've got Chad Henne. Most time you're putting the ball. Andy Reid, no. Andy Reid's going for it to win the game, and that's what he does. And really, really good. Though the Browns lost, Baker Mayfield had a really good game. If you're a Browns fan, you can't really be upset. Rashard Higgins had that costly fumble through the back of the end zone. You just can't make plays like that. But if you're a Browns fan, you won your first playoff game. Made the playoffs for the first time in 18 years. Won your first playoff game since 1994. And this team is young. There's not a lot of old people on the Browns. They should be good. And the final game Sunday night was I think the most boring game this weekend. The score doesn't indicate it, but Tampa Bay sent home Drew Brees and the New Orleans Saints 30-20 in what is likely Drew Brees' final game. Hell of a career, Drew. I think you should have retired last year. Your arm just didn't have it in it anymore. He played injured, hurt, really tried to win the Saints through. It's going to be weird to see an NFL without Drew Brees in it. One of the best quarterbacks to ever play. But ultimately, his 3 interceptions in his play cost the Saints that ball game. Both offenses looked awful. Completely awful in that game. You're going to say, the Bucs put up 30 points and Tom Brady played great. No, he didn't. Tom Brady threw for 55% completion percentage, and his 3 scoring drives went for a total of 63 yards. He could not score unless he was given field position across half field. Yeah, the Bucs won, and yeah, that defense played really well, but this narrative going around that Tom Brady at 43 played a great playoff game. No, he fucking didn't. He could barely complete over 50% of his passes. He threw a few balls that should have been picked off. Yeah, he won, but his defense getting him 4 turnovers, 3 of which were interceptions, 1 of which went for a pick 6, is why he won, and not because Tom Brady had a good game. It's a shame to see Drew Brees go like that, but honestly, it sounds bad, but should have been benched. I get this thing that how demoralizing is it to be benched in your last game, but these guys got to try and win playoff games. And when your longest play comes from Jameis Winston throwing the ball, maybe that's a sign for something. But the Bucs, their defense played really well. Offense looked extremely lackluster. So I got 3-4 on my picks for that. I picked the Chiefs, Packers, and Bills right, but got the Saints over the Bucs. But I did say that could be an easy upset. So going into the championship games, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers come to Lambeau to face the red-hot Green Bay Packers in the NFC Championship game at 4:05 Atlantic time, 3:05 Eastern. I think the Packers win this. Again, I know everybody's going to point out that 38-10 win in Week 6, but if you actually go back and watch that game, until Aaron Rodgers threw those 2 interceptions, the Packers were dominating. They kept trying to run to the edge, which they want to. It's rare for Matt LaFleur to lose to a team twice. The number 1 defense couldn't stop them. You get 2 interceptions on Aaron, one of which to the host. That's not going to happen. The guy threw 5 interceptions all year, 2 of which came in that game. And then the Packers' defense since then has gotten a lot better too, both against the run and the pass. This defense has gotten better with age. They pressure the quarterback better than they did back then. Again, the Bucs really didn't play well offensively last week. They couldn't score. And I know everybody says, well, Tom Brady's used to playing in the cold. Congrats, nobody else on that roster is. Most of them have been playing in Florida for years or been drafted to Florida where it's not going to get below 70 degrees. You're coming 70 degrees Fahrenheit. You're coming to Lambeau where it's 20-something degrees Fahrenheit and it's supposed to snow. That's not going to be fun. Like people say, Brady's used to the cold. Yeah, but these wide receivers aren't used to catching in the cold, and that's extremely hard to do. These players aren't used to running in the cold, which is hard on your lungs. You take a lot more out. I think this game's not going to be as close as they're giving it. So I think the Packers win, and if you're betting on this game, take the Packers -3.5, which could increase or decrease, because again, this is Thursday at 7:25. So take that. And another thing, this is a bet that is pretty automatic. Take Davante Adams' first TD, or if you don't think they're going to score a first TD of the game, at least take Davante Adams' first Packers touchdown. That's a bet that almost hits every time. He's a touchdown machine. He's unguardable. I don't think the Bucs are going to be able to guard him. I was listening to former NFL GM Michael Lombardi today, and he said, the way you beat the Bucs is you throw the ball. They have one of the best run defenses in the league. And that's what happened to the Packers last time. They kept trying to run the ball. So what do? Do what the Chiefs did. Do what literally every team that's beaten them done. Put pressure on Brady and throw the ball early and often. Because that secondary can't keep up, especially in the back end. And then for the final game, the Bills go into Arrowhead to play the Kansas City Chiefs. Mahomes is likely to play. The lines are set right now like he's going to play. But I still think the Bills win this game. It could go either way. But Arrowhead's not going to be a crazy weather advantage for KC because the Bills are used to playing outside in the cold and the snow and windy and shit weather. But the fans in Arrowhead, that's another thing in Lambeau too. They only had 68,000 total fans because they sold like 6,500 tickets and then had a bunch of Fan League frontline workers there. That was loud. Like those 8,000 people were loud, and that's going to be the thing with Arrowhead. Is the Bills are going to have to play through the noise. But Josh Allen's playing really well right now. The Chiefs' defense is not as good as the Ravens. Mahomes isn't going to be able to scramble as much because of the toe injury he had last week, as well as they're probably not going to risk it with his neck or his head or whatever that injury is that they're keeping super quiet. So, yeah, I like the Bills in this game, but it wouldn't, I could see the Chiefs winning too, so I don't know if I touch this game. I'm picking the Bills to win. If you're feeling risky, I'd take the Bills money line because the odds are better. But if you don't think they're going to win, but they're going to cover, you can take the plus 3.0 spread. So just to review that, because there's not a lot of games this week left to review, I have the Packers beating the Bucs. I'd take Packers minus 3.5 all day. Tease that up to around 6 if you can, if you want. And Davante Adams' first TD, or at least first Packers TD in that game. And then in the Bills game, I don't know if I'd touch this, but if you want to, I'd take the Bills money line or Bills plus 3. And then we go to NFL news, which to start this off, we're going to get into a little bit of a more somber topic, especially because this is a little closer to me the most. Well, not closer as in no, but today it was announced that former Packers GM Ted Thompson had passed away. I got a lot of respect for Ted. Ted's a guy who basically built my childhood. Like most of the players I loved came from Ted Thompson. Aaron Rodgers, the guy who made me fall in love with football, was Ted Thompson's first ever draft pick. It was the guy he took his chance on. David Bakhtiari, Aaron Jones, Davante Adams, Jordy Nelson, Greg Jennings, Kenny Clark. Like, this Packers team wouldn't be where it's at today. They wouldn't have won that 2010 Super Bowl. They wouldn't be as successful as they've been for the past decade. If it wasn't for Ted Thompson. So it was a little gut-wrenching to hear that he passed and he's not going to be able to hopefully see the Packers win a Super Bowl. But this is motivation. The Packers have had a lot of, through the 2020-2021 season, they've had a lot of legends lost. Kevin Green, Paul Hornung, and now Ted Thompson. So if there's a year, you got to win it now for Ted. But into lighter news, the NFL coaching buzz started going. In fact, it started right after I recorded last week's episode. Within the hour, my phone was getting notifications of head coaching hires. So, as of now, out of all the head coach vacancies, the Houston Texans are the only one that still need to make a hire. Over the past week, actually today, was the newest head coaching hires as the Eagles hired Colts offensive coordinator, Nick Sirianni to be their head coach. This is a holding on to whatever they can of Frank Reich move, because Frank Reich's the guy who had Carson Wentz playing like an MVP in 2017. So to me, this means Carson Wentz isn't leaving Philadelphia. Obviously, they're bringing in a guy like Nick, that was like Frank Reich, to hopefully bring Carson back. So what's interesting now is if they try to trade Jalen Hurts or keep them both. It'd be a super interesting situation in Philadelphia. One of the best and most underrated hirings. I'm also happy because this guy's leaving one of these guys leaving the NFC. The Chargers hired Rams defensive coordinator Brandon Staley for their head coaching position. A lot of people thought they were going to take Brian Daboll out of Buffalo, but reports came out that they didn't want to change their offensive staff because of how well rookie quarterback Justin Herbert played. In fact, Justin Herbert just had the greatest rookie quarterback season ever in a year with no training camp and where he didn't start until I think week 2. Week 2 is when he started. But I think it's a super good move. Brandon Staley just led the NFL's number 1 defense in almost every metric. And now he's getting into a Chargers defense, which is really underrated. Has a ton of talent. So much talent. Rookie Kenneth Murray Jr., Derwin James, Chris Harris, Casey Hayward, Joey Bosa, Melvin Ingram, Linval Joseph. There's loads of talent on that defense. And if they can finally get it used, it's going to be a really strong unit because that offense obviously didn't need work. We saw that this year. That's a talented offense. The other side of O-line doesn't really need any positional upgrades. One of the more interesting hires that I never thought, the Lions hired Saints tight end coach Dan Campbell. The guy gave one hell of a press conference today. It looked like Stone Cold Steve Austin giving a fucking press conference. Seems like he's loads of energy. Apparently guys around the NFL love him. Honestly, it can't get worse than the human hairy meatball Matt fucking Patricia, so we'll see how it goes. In a hire I really, really like, the Falcons hired Titans offensive coordinator Arthur Smith for their head coach position. This is a move I really like. Arthur Smith has called an extremely efficient offense for the past 2 years. Turned Ryan Tannehill into one of the most efficient NFL quarterbacks after they got a hold of him. Has put Derrick Henry's true potential out that nobody else was really able to get out of him. He calls really good schemes. I think he's going to be good in Atlanta. Again, anything can be better than Dan Quinn, who they kept around for way too long. It'll be interesting to see what they do with Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, whether they keep them around or they get rid of them and try to give Arthur Smith new weapons. In the last head coaching hire that I'll talk about, because we already covered Urban Meyer and stuff last week, and the best hiring out of this cycle, the Jets got a hold of 49ers defensive coordinator Robert Saleh as the NFL's first Muslim head coach. This is huge for the Jets and for the NFL. It's no known secret to anybody who watches the NFL that the NFL has a problem getting minority head coaching positions. A lot of people didn't want to hire Brian Flores, and he's been one of the best NFL head coaches. He's turned around Miami. Mike Tomlin, but most of the guys are white. They have rules in that you have to interview minorities because of how hard it is. Not saying these rules are right. The NFL really has poor rules when trying to get minority representation, but it is a serious issue that they need to somehow fix. So Robert Saleh coming in as the first Muslim NFL head coach is huge, let alone the fact that I think he was the best coach in this cycle. The guy's called a dominant San Francisco defense for 2 years. Hell, they had barely any talent left after all their injuries this year. Yet he still had, they still think they were still in top 10. He's a high-energy guy, super smart. He also got Mike LaFleur. LaFleur's the last name sounds familiar. Matt LaFleur is currently Green Bay's head coach. Well, Matt LaFleur's brother is now going to be the OC. He took in New York, which is good because the LaFleurs are great with quarterbacks. Saleh's really put together a good coaching regime. New York, the Jets fans have to be ecstatic. You have 2 first-round picks this year, one of them at number 2. You have young talent. You have Marcus May, who's come out as one of the better safeties. You've got Quinnen Williams. You drafted a stud tackle in Mekhi Becton. Denzel Mims at wide receiver looks like he can be a stud if we can actually get a quarterback who can get him the ball. But that's another team has the opportunity to take a guy like Justin Fields at 2, or they can wait a year if they think they can turn around Sam Darnold. And then we had some big-name coordinator hires. Rams hired interim head coach for the Atlanta Falcons after Dan Quinn went. Raheem Morris as their new defensive coordinator. Not a bad thing. After Dan Quinn left, that Falcons defense and Falcons team played better. So good on Raheem Morris for getting a new job with a better defense in LA. And then the Jags hired Darrell Bevell, the interim head coach in Detroit after Matt Patricia was hired as their OC. Again, I don't think this is really a bad hire either. Bevell led a better Lions team than Matt Patricia could. Far more disciplined, played a lot better games. Can't really complain with either of those hires. I don't think a team's really made a bad hire yet. Well, we won't find out, but the biggest off-the-board hire was Nick Sirianni, and then when you really look at it, it's the closest thing to Frank Reich, so it's not that surprising, but the Texans have kind of fucked themselves. The Deshaun Watson shit's still going. He still might want out. It's come out that Jack Easterby is a fucking prick, and a lot of guys don't like him. Andre Johnson, former Texans legend, has come out and told Deshaun to get the hell out. Houston finally interviewed Chiefs offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy like Deshaun Watson's been asking. Lord knows if they'll hire him, they have to wait till the Chiefs either lose or the playoffs are over, because you can't hire any playoff team coaches until they're done. So possibly Eric Bieniemy goes to the Texans, but at this rate, fuck knows who wants to go coach there. All these guys want head coaching positions. That's the way it's going to go. Obviously, you'd rather be a head coach than a coordinator, because being a head coach is what all these guys dream about. But the Texans are in a fucking horrendous situation. They have no first or second round pick this year because their third overall pick is in Miami because Bill O'Brien screwed that. They have no cap space because the Brandon Cooks and David Johnson contracts they took on with no good reason. So if they get a coach there, he's in for a whirlwind, especially because his top 5 young elite quarterback might want out. Fuck knows how that situation's going to go, because news is right now the NFL that it's going to require at least 3 first-round picks to get Deshaun Watson, and there's no way they trade him to anybody in the AFC, because you don't want him standing in the way of you going to a Super Bowl. If you trade him to the NFC, the worst he can do is play you in a Super Bowl. Trade him to the AFC, someone in your conference, and he can stop you from getting there. So my best bet is either goes to San Fran or the Bears, but part of me still doesn't know if he moves just because the price it's going to cost. And I know people can say he can hold out, but with the new CBA signed, holding out is extremely detrimental for players. It costs you a bunch. It's super shitty to hold out. The fines get a lot worse. You lose a shitload of money out of your contract. Your year contract pay the minute you start holding out. It's a really ugly system. And then in some roster moves, Packers signed cornerback, 37-year-old cornerback Tramon Williams back to their practice squad. I love this. Tramon was huge in that 2010 Super Bowl run. Is a great veteran presence. Since he was on the Ravens practice squad and they waived him, the Packers can claim him. He's another super late addition, along with Jared Velda here, which is still in the COVID protocol. Hope he gets better. Damon Snacks Harrison, Tavon Austin, a lot of these late adds that the Packers are doing to make sure they're solidified. I think they truly added Tramon because they think if they can win a Super Bowl and get Tramon that second ring he deserves. Hopefully when he retires, he comes and becomes a DB coach with the Packers because he's a super smart guy. He's 37 and playing cornerback is already one of the hardest positions in the NFL, let alone they have a really steep to hard to climb when their age gets up there, and 37's old to be playing at any position, let alone cornerback, which is the hardest position in the NFL outside of quarterback. Good news, no team's hired Adam Gase yet. Bill O'Brien's back down in college in Alabama. Thank fuck. Hopefully none of these idiotic head coaches from last year get hired again. People are talking about hiring Bucs defensive coordinator Todd Bowles. Their defense has been good, but does no one remember when Todd Bowles was a head coach before? wasn't exactly. It's like Josh McDaniels. He was getting interviews with the Eagles. I think Josh McDaniels truly will never get a head coaching job. His offenses look stale. When he snaked the Colts and turned that down, I think that's when he lost all chances. Because no team can now take his word serious. Because he told the Colts he was going to go there, then he rescinded. And people forget how awful he was with Denver, too. McDaniels is an awful coach in Denver. Horrible. Screwed that team. And even now, his offensive coordinating is looking fucking horrendous. So I don't think Josh McDaniels is ever going to get another head coaching opportunity. I think the Eagles was his last shot. Hopefully by the time next week and we can review the Super Bowl, the Texans will figure their shit out. But it's Houston, and that organization's a shit show. Jack Esterby's a fucking moron. Hopefully Deshaun Watson stays, because it's really shitty for the fans of Houston right now. Everybody's leaving. James Harden left in basketball. Astros players like George Springer and Garrett Cole left. Everybody's leaving Houston. They traded D-Hop and Jadavian Clowney too. Ain't much to be happy if you're a Houston fan in sports anymore. But, with shorter games this week's going to be a shorter episode. So that's everything for this week's episode. If you want to keep updated on everything, make sure you follow me on all social medias at PassProPod. And I'd just like to thank you for listening.